Hey, Bob,
Hello,
how you doing?
pretty good. How about you?
Hanging in there.
Can't hear you very well.
I have to be in the hallway. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Take it off.
Hey, Jim, George, Kristen. Wow, everybody's here. Wow, holy mackerel.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Oh, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we have 6 finance committee members, and Melody said she'd be a little bit late. So we can go ahead and start.
Mhm.
Oh, call a meeting to order.
Mhm.
And I see we have Kristen here too. So as not to tie you up any late more than necessary, why don't we start with police budget? If that works for you, Kristen?
Absolutely.
Okay. Kristen, do you know the finance committee people?
Well, I think
Or do you want
somewhat,
to need some introductions or?
I think we've had some interactions already. And although I don't know everyone as perfectly as I'd like to, I do recognize all the faces.
Okay. Okay, I think, Becky, did you send us?
Did I not send you Kristen's? Oh, crap.
No.
I'll send it right now. I'm sorry. Sorry, Kristen.
That's okay. We've had a pretty busy day today.
Yeah.
And I say we have Ryan here also, so that we'll follow up with treasurer budget or budgets.
Hi, everyone. I will be here waiting. No rush.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, would you like me to put it up? I sent it, but I can put it up. Okay, where's FinCom 23? Here. Please. Wages in my police department.
There we are.
Doesn't get more straightforward than this.
Oh,
Yeah.
Level funded, yeah.
yes. So whenever you're ready, you just let me know. I'll
I'd
start
say
talking.
go ahead and start presenting, Kristen, as you want to present the budget.
Okay, so as stated, doesn't get much more it doesn't get easier than this. So as you can see, this is the level funded line budget that I am proposing. We do have to take into account the current economy and inflation that we do have at hand. But I feel that I can continue with the budget as we have last year. And that's why I haven't changed anything. I'm trying to be very cognizant of the taxpayers' very hard-earned money. And I'm working on being a good steward with the current budget, making sure that every money that we spend is spent efficiently and purposefully. So I have been working hard at making sure any money that I spend, I'm getting deals and things like that. So that's why I feel that I can continue with the budget with the same line as it was previous. So not much to say on that, except that I think we're in good standing.
There's Becky and then AJ.
I just want to mention, like all other budgets, the police wages will be subject to the union contract. And the union is back in force and has been reaching out to the negotiators. So Bob, we're going to have a little bit of work to wrap up what we had done over the summer and into the fall.
And I would guess the salary will be subject to how things play out in the
Yeah,
next.
and I believe what had already been accepted was a 3% for the wages.
For the
But
wage.
it's not final until the select board signs off. So I did not, that piece is always left to, isn't really the department heads under their control as in all the other budgets.
But right now, there has been a negotiation that's been completed, and that is 3%.
The prior, no, I'm just saying the prior contract was at 3%. The current contract is not final. Bob is aware of where we were at, and we will conclude those negotiations hopefully this month. But I just was reached out to a couple days ago by BJ, Brian, I forgot Brian's last name, but he's our new union guy.
I just want to say, we suspended negotiations with the union because of all the activity going on about police in the state and all the things that were moving targets that we had to try to pay attention to. So I think maybe some things have settled down. Maybe we'll be meeting with them, but we really didn't get very far. George, you were part of that process. We have to just re-engage and see where we're at, and that'll have to get my file down and look at it. But yeah, the question I wanted to ask Kristen is about the police chief salary. Now that's a contract that has to be negotiated with the select board and the personnel board. Is that not true? But you're just taking a stab at it in this budget?
So that's absolutely true. So this would be at whatever police chief is decided upon, that would be a starting the starting rate. So I did request some assistance with that. So if I'm missing anything, Becky, chime in.
Well, I just want to clarify, Kristen just brought forward the prior year's budget.
That makes sense. But I want to, so those things are all subject to whatever negotiations might
Right,
happen down the road.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
That's just,
Yes.
you're just saying, this is what we had last year. Let's bring it
Right.
forward right now in this draft.
correct.
Yes.
Good.
Great.
I think AJ had his hand up earlier, and then George.
Yeah, Kristen, I had a vague memory, and I don't even remember what the context was, um, about a discussion where the police cruiser maintenance line had perhaps not been sufficiently funded over the years, and we were sort of running into problems with sort of like deferred maintenance. But I'm like very foggy on this. Was this a discussion that we had, or maybe it was part of the
Yes,
capital
AJ.
planning? Okay.
Yes, AJ, this was a discussion we briefly touched on in capital planning.
Okay.
And it wasn't that it wasn't sufficient or it won't be sufficient. It's just that last year I used to the penny of the cruiser maintenance. And that is because a lot of maintenance hadn't been done on the cruisers. Regular maintenance is what I'm speaking of. Each cruiser needed new tires. They all needed this year I'm moving, I have, I think, you know, I'd have to look, but I think I have $700 left, but that was because we needed all new brakes for every cruiser. They hadn't been attended to. So we're cutting it close. But I think that if, as long as I stay on top of things and we don't have any major issues, I think that it would be sufficient. I think that this line is with regular maintenance and keeping up on top of the maintenance. And then we won't have to go backwards and have all cruisers have all new tires one year, all cruisers have all new brakes and rotors the next year. So I plan on staying up on all of the maintenance for the cruisers and hopeful that this will be sufficient if we don't run into any major situations.
Got it. Okay. So the problems had more to do with sort of like deferred maintenance that hadn't been like attended to, but
Yes.
the line as it's currently funded should be sufficient for kind of the typical maintenance that would be required.
I believe so, yes.
Okay,
I've
got it.
worked on getting people working on the cruisers that aren't costing us as much, but still doing sufficient work for the cruisers, working on taking them to different places for different needs of the cruisers, so that we're not always taking it, say, to a dealership where it's going to be the most expensive.
I think George, then Jim, and then Bob.
So hiring a police chief, we're putting a full year's salary here for the police chief, but when do we realistically think that we would actually hire a police chief? Becky, I mean, this might be a question for you anyways, yes.
We don't know for sure. But it could, I mean, it's possible it could be the beginning of the new fiscal year. So we need to plan for that possibility.
If it's not, and that person's negotiating a higher salary than this, then we're okay. But if that person negotiates a higher salary, then this number might be low.
Correct.
And how would we deal with that?
I would recommend going to the finance committee.
A FinCom transfer or reserve transfer?
Yeah.
Okay, Jim, and then Bob.
What happened to the plan to have someone at the highway department do some of the maintenance, on shared maintenance that we could do in town without having to use outside vendors, which are always a little bit more expensive? I wonder if that plan has completely fallen through, or is it still going? Becky, you might know the answer to this.
Yep. So we did attempt that. I think he did work on a couple jobs on the cruisers, and it became very clear quickly that a lift was needed for some of the work that was required to one of the cruisers. And then, the program didn't develop a lot. I think there were about 3 or 4 jobs done. And then the person did not continue on in this fiscal year at the same level. He's only doing snow plowing at this point. He returned to another job for more permanent work.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say, I did talk to last year when we had this budget presented to us by Dan. I did have a discussion with Dan Hayes, who works at ESP Auto. Under the regime of Tom, the cruisers were always worked on by that company, and it was kind of convenient in a way because Dan and his brother drive there every day, and one of them would pick up the cruiser, drive it, do the work on it, whatever it might be, and then deliver it back to the town hall. And I asked him about why the budget was being overspent, and he told me that the cruisers were not being maintained, which confirms what Kristen is saying, that they hadn't had their oils changed, they hadn't had their brakes inspected, they had some difficulties with some cruiser had run into the woods or off the road, might have been damage on its underside and stuff. Lots of stuff happened. I don't think it's worth getting into the blame game about this, except to say, why don't we consider that arrangement that was underneath, that was under Tom, that changed somehow mysteriously last year, where we had good qualified mechanics doing work. I don't think that it was ever established, as far as I know, that these people were gouging us or charging a lot or something. So is that something you were looking into, Chris?
That's a great idea.
Could I-
I want you to know that I do shop around to find out the best prices for the needs of the cruisers, making sure for absolute certain that we are getting qualified people as well. But I'll for sure keep them on my list of calling when I need somebody to check into the repairs of the cruisers.
Anyway, I'm happy to hear you say that you're going to stay on top of the maintenance, because those are very expensive machines, and it's part of it's a certain responsibility that you have to make sure they're maintained properly. And that's going to
Absolutely.
be beneficial to us here.
Yes, not just for the financial aspect, but also for the safety of the officers and the residents. You have a heavy machine there that goes fast. We need to make sure that our, officers are safe inside and the residents are safe as we pass by them. So yes, I completely agree. I take it very seriously.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Becky.
Bob, I just wanted to respond. Dan started shopping around when he took over in 2018 and into 2019. He had not been using ESP consistently, and from what Kristen discovered, it did not appear he was using anyone consistently except for emergencies. So that's why, the departure from ESP did not happen last year. It began in 2018, 2019.
I know that, and that was what I was pointing out. And as far as the whole issue with the highway department, I think that was a little bit strange too, because the person that was doing the mechanics work was a guy that no longer works for them, and I was looking for something for him to do because he was not able to do a lot of the work that they need to do over there with picks and shovels and things. So they were trying to give him some work. So that issue has been resolved. He's off. He just drives truck for them now. And so I think we don't have to be concerned about keeping him busy. So I hope that Kristen can find some way to keep the vehicles maintained, just because for the reasons that she laid out very well.
Okay, I do want to respond that he also did for years, for the last 10 years, he did quite a bit of maintenance for the highway department and helped Walter, giving him advice on some of the fire truck maintenance as well. So while we didn't make the program work, not getting him appropriate equipment for the cruisers, he had done quite a bit of very helpful work to the department, highway department, over time.
Okay.
Any other questions for Kristen? Susie.
Hi, Kristen. Do you, I'm looking back at last year's and trying to remember how many officers this payroll covered. Do you have an idea of what will be covered by this FY23 budget? How many people? I'm sure
Hi,
it
Susie.
varies. Hi.
Hi, Susie. Yes, so last year,
What would you like to know about Susie?
oh, my Siri's trying to talk to me here. Sorry. What would you like to know about Susie? So last year, as we all know, there was really a lot of inconsistency. And I'm trying to create more consistency throughout the department. This budget, particularly in officer salary, is hopeful to reflect the chief, 2 full-time officers, potentially a sergeant position, and then hopefully 2 part-time officers. I think we have budgeted for 3, but I'm just trying to get us back up to where we need to be so that we can provide Shutesbury with what it deserves. So back up to that, the idea of staffing the department in the manner in which that it was laid out to be.
Thank you.
Kristen,
Becky.
could you just, sorry, just one quick question, just for the minutes here. Can you just repeat like those positions? You said a chief, 2 full-time officers. Does that include the sergeant?
So
Or is that
two
a
full-
separate?
No, so yes, just to be very clear, so it would be a chief and then 2 full-time positions, one of those potentially being a sergeant's position.
I see. Thank
Does
you.
that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else, AJ, to repeat or?
So, and then in addition to the 2 full-time FTEs, there is plans for a couple of part-time, possibly 3
Yes.
part-time? Okay.
That would be needed for various different levels of the needs of the department, holidays, vacations, and also, covering different details and road jobs and things of that nature.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Becky, I think you had something.
I just wanted to say, in working out the budget, it looks, the goal has been to fund 16 hours of shifts per day that Kristen has been working for, as well as the chief. And this budget will do that. I ran all the numbers to be sure the officers' pay. We will be able to do that.
Good.
Okay, any other questions for Kristen? Kristen, thanks very much for joining us this evening and walking us through the budget.
Thank you very much.
Appreciated, and for keeping us level funded at this point.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you so much for hearing me and walking me through my first fiscal budget discussion.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
All right. Have a good evening.
You.
Okay, Ryan.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
How's everyone doing tonight?
So far, so good.
Good, good. Sorry, I'm just finishing up. I was trying to balance for January. So I try to maximize every minute I have. So I couldn't just sit here and do nothing. So I don't know if Becky passed forward the budgets or not to you.
She did.
Okay,
Yes.
awesome.
Do people want the budgets on screen or no? A lot of them are very one number type of budgets, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure why I didn't send it to you in one PDF. So I apologize because that was just a really challenging way to demonstrate this. So that's my fault. But
I think some of these we might
be worth looking at. If I can try
Yeah.
to touch on the ones that I don't necessarily think would be really worth viewing, but
Okay.
happy to share as however is wanted.
Yeah, I certainly think there are at least some that we'd want to go through together and see together. Susie.
I found it a little hard because the FY22 numbers weren't there. So I went back and found FY22 numbers and put them up beside. So
Do you want to
I'm,
share what you have, Susie?
No, it's a mess.
Oh,
I can make note in the future to include that on the actual form when I
That's
submit
it.
it.
But I can refer to them, or maybe Ryan has the FY22 numbers to refer to when we're looking at change.
Let's see. Here. Okay. Okay. So I guess we can start with the unemployment one. So I'm requesting for the unemployment budget, $10,000 be placed into that in the event that we see any type of uptick in that. I do feel this is the same request as last year, as Susie's asked for here. We have barely expended that line this year. Again, it's one of those ones that could be really volatile if something was to take place. But we also did navigate a pandemic, which in a lot of cases, one would expect to see some substantial hits in your unemployment line, and we didn't see drastic hits there. So I feel comfortable leaving this budget level funded.
and just so you know, Ryan, we did not fund it.
I thought maybe I didn't actually look
Because
what was
have
funded, and I
those-
looked at what was expended so far is probably what I had up a few minutes
We had
ago.
10,000 left over from the year before, right?
Right,
So we
Right.
just,
We didn't
we do
spend
not
it.
fund it. So why can't we do that again?
yeah. And I believe we can do that. We can carry it forward.
You can.
Yeah.
And again, like I usually say, the only reason why you would want to consider changing this would be if the budget is tight and the expectation is that we're going to be having some layoffs, because then obviously we would need to adapt there. But if that's not the expectation, then I don't see any reason to do anything different there.
Okay,
Becky,
yeah,
can you refresh our memory on this? I thought we created an unemployment fund. Did we not do that?
we did. We have a
And then we're-
trust fund, and that's why the number was reduced in there. Ryan's just trying to make sure we fund the unemployment line to what we've done with, to fund the trust fund at the same as we would the unemployment line. So there's sufficient funds in there.
Okay, so right now, 5,000 that we budgeted in 22 wouldn't be sufficient increase, you're thinking, for 23. The fund would come up short by the end of 23?
I think that's what Ryan's saying. Is that right?
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
Okay,
Becky,
yeah. I'm sorry, is that a question?
no. Okay, we have Susie's hands up.
So I'm a little confused. On our expense sheet, on page 3, line 015913, it says 5,000. So does this mean that last year we decided, as we could remember, that we weren't going to fund it at 10, we were going to fund it at 5, and this is a holdover from the previous year? Is that what I'm hearing?
I believe there was a few $1,000s already in the unemployment line in the trust,
So is unemployment,
adding to it through the budget.
so when I see in this expense sheet called unemployment benefits, am I looking at the correct line?
Yes,
Okay, so you're calling it a trust, but I'm
So-
not looking for another thing called trust.
There is an actual unemployment trust expense at the end of the expense report.
Yeah, it's on page 14, expenditure trust funds. The trust fund has a balance of $12,600 at this very moment.
Oh, okay. I get it.
618 of it was spent this year, and then 5,000 was added from the line that's in the budget.
Okay.
right.
So if we approve $10,000 and there's no more claims this year, we'll have to start the year $22,600 for an employment trust fund available for paying out unemployment benefits. And Ryan, you think that's about the number we're going to need for 23 is basically another way of saying it, right?
Yeah, I think we could probably, based on how this year is going, we could probably get away with doing 5,000. But it's one of those ones that actually most of these line items that I have, it's one of the ones where if something happens, you bleed through money very quickly.
Understood.
You know, when
But-
you have nothing, it's easy. But if you had one person that you laid off and they couldn't find work, or if you have someone that's employed through the town and they work full-time, you know, they have employment elsewhere outside of the town, if they leave their employer, you know, for, you know, whatever the reasoning may be outside of the town picks up the bill for that unemployment. So
Yeah,
your
if they
risk
work
is
for you for the last 12
broader than
months.
just the scope that is here in the town, which is why I get nervous with the real low line items on this one.
Understood. You know, when we went to this concept, the point was we wanted not to change this dollar amount on this line item in the budget year over year. We wanted to come up with a number that we could fund it each year and know that we would never hit that floor that you're concerned about.
Mhm.
And so, and we've only been doing this for a couple of years, so we probably don't know what that number really is. But going from 5 to 10,000 seems like a pretty big leap in my mind.
I think
I
that's fair.
understand what you're thinking. It sounds very conservative and wise, but I would like to keep it close to 5,000 or not quite go to the 10, but that's just me personally.
No, it's me too.
Me too.
Me too. I just said, last year we decided the level we wanted to attain required us to put 5,000 in, is that correct? So we
Yes.
spent 600 out of that fund. So
Mhm.
now, if we put 5,000 in, we're just using last year as a standard, which is the only standard I can come up with. I think that we're going to exceed the level of the trust fund by $4,400 from what it was last year, what we thought was appropriate last year. So I think $5,000 is the maximum we should score for this year, because there's no reason to believe that we're going to need it more this year than we did last year.
Okay, I think that's
And
fair.
that would put us at 17,006.
That's a lot of money. I mean, considering that we don't lay people off here, and I don't think that we're anticipating that's going to be layoffs. If
the
someone quits
school-
and goes to a different job, that's a different issue, right, Brian?
Say, I all I heard was whatever the question was in between you saying, right, Ryan, I missed.
Well, if someone quits, you don't pay unemployment to everybody who moves on. I'm saying that if you lay somebody off, they're entitled to unemployment. If they quit and
Right.
go somewhere else, they don't get unemployment. It's not a concern of ours.
Right. It's not necessary. You could argue that as a hard and fast rule, but unfortunately, the system doesn't always work that way. And really, I guess the point that I wanted to iterate there wasn't that them necessarily, if you have anyone employed outside of the town too, that risk is what makes it so much greater. I'm not super worried about us having any crazy layoffs or people leaving their jobs. I just don't know. We have a lot of employees who are part-time, so most likely a lot of them are employed elsewhere as well. So it's hard to have an actual measurement, I guess, of the scope of risk there. But, you can't argue the numbers that exist currently, which would be the expenditure of only, just shy of $700. So it makes sense to keep it at 5, I think.
Becky, and then George.
A number of years ago, the superintendent left, and we got hit with quickly in a very short time period. We would burn through $30,000-$40,000 in the unemployment line. So there's the unpredictable part, and then there's more of the average trend. And with the current school administration, the school potentially has the highest turnover. So, but with a stable administration, we haven't had a lot of unemployment claims since Ryan came. Is that true, Ryan?
That is true. Yeah, there was only the very first year that I was here, there was a decent amount. But since then, that one has fallen off, and there has been very few, other than fraudulent claims. That was a lot of those and very time consuming. Other than that, there's been no legitimate,
Those were big
claims.
during COVID.
Yeah, that was intense.
Yeah, there were a lot.
George, and then Susie.
Yeah, so I wanted to remind you, and last year we talked, we're in a pay-as-you-go method, right? So we're paying out every dollar that a person collects in unemployment comes out of that fund, as opposed to being in the state program where most employers are private employers, pay a percentage of everybody's pay, and then the state just pays whatever the person gets. Have we looked into the possibility of switching the way we do this from a financial point of view to see if it might, what our unemployment bill would be if we did that? It seems to me it's probably going to be higher than $5,000 a year, but I'm just curious if we have a sense of that.
I could give you. We haven't performed like a formal study, if you will, on that. I thought I'd have a register nearby. I could probably have given you an estimate as to what we would spend annually, but
Can I ask you, do you know what our total annual payroll is?
I actually just sent that figure yesterday to somebody. So give me one.
Because it would probably be something like 3, 4, or 5% of that is what we would end up paying.
which is a
Which would
lot.
be more than 5,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's my question. I don't know what it is, so
Our annual payroll for FY20 was 2.7 million.
Okay, that answers that
2%, George.
question. Yeah. But, you just want to turn these rocks over and make sure you're not missing something. Okay,
Unemployment is very, very expensive because a lot of people do put in false claims and they have to be covered by the system. And we have a very fortunate, we're a very fortunate situation here with our employees, and we have good prospects to keep stability in our system. So I think that's a good bet for us to fund it ourselves. That's how it appears to me.
Susie,
For process, do we have to make any decision tonight? Can we just receive this? Or do we need to vote that we want to stick with the 5,000 that we had decided as a level to stick with?
I will be entering 5,000, and as you work through, I'm noting what the balance is. Treasurers tend to ask for everything that will make things very comfortable. They tend to be conservative, like Gabe was, and I rarely used their numbers.
Not wrong.
But they're good, yeah, they're a good thing to have, and there's certain situations you really need to. But we've been able to work the numbers a little harder in the past.
That one's done.
okay,
So if we go to,
so we're penciling in 5,000 for that number.
Yep.
Okay. That's one down.
so the one I'm looking at next is the veterans budget. It had been, I'm trying to find what we actually, what I'm realizing now by talking to you is that I don't think I ever went back to look to see what Becky and everyone changed the number to after I made my requests. I think so. There's a
I
very
told
good
you I
chance that
kept
my
it.
idea of level funding is not your idea of level funding.
Right.
But I had historically asked for 15,000 with the veterans, and I do recall last year we talked about bringing it down to 12. I don't know if we ended up going lower than that, but I have requested 12,000 moving forward this year.
We did come down,
I bet you came down. Did you come down a lot?
I think, to 4.
Yeah.
5.
5.
5.
Yeah.
We compromised at 5. It turned out
Compromise.
Mike Finsky sent a report that I normally don't get from the veterans.
Mhm.
I think that had it at 48. We had started, we took your number, and then I looked at the activity, and I think we lowered it from 12 to 8. And then upon review of that other number, we went to 5.
All right, so
And then
I
we had
will-
no activity, correct?
No
Mhm.
That is
activity,
correct.
no activity through January.
Yeah, we have not had any, we don't have one in town currently. Okay,
So do we
so
wanna
then I
leave
would
this-
support 5.
Do we want to leave this at 5?
That's fine with me.
Moving on.
Beautiful. Let's do.
Are you gonna do your budget next, Ryan?
I can do that.
The treasurer budget?
Treasurer budget.
I'll put that, you want me to put it on screen, or you got it?
If you want, I don't know if I have shareability here.
I gave it to you.
Oh, that's convenient. Now let's see if I can navigate this with my 2 monitors.
I got it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, so looking over, again, I didn't include the last year's number. Last year's number, the requested was $11,450. Henry? Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me take that toy from you. Don't play with rocks. Okay. So that was requested. I should probably again look and see what's actually, because I remember we had an issue where the wrong amount was put in the year before, and I don't know if we ended up.
Actually, I think we did what you asked last year, 11,450.
All right, perfect. So this year I'm requesting a total of 12,280. And I think I kept the same.
Is
line
this
item.
where we were at 11,450 for the current year, the current budget?
Yes.
Okay. So we're looking at about a 550,
830.
830 increase.
Mhm.
8%.
So the increases that you'll see here is that the increase in postage. And there's actually a new line item here that I included for $780. And what I'm hoping to see funded in the budget is a $65 monthly payment to cost the expense of my cell phone that I utilize on a nonstop basis for the municipality. I did base that number off of what the chief and the other officers receive when they're working. Just, it wasn't a number that I pulled out of nowhere, essentially is what I'm saying here. I'm open to it just really being a point of discussion this time around. I just didn't really know any other way to discuss it without putting it in here. So
I'll make sure I understand I follow your point. So right now, there is nothing, the current budget that we're working with doesn't have a phone item, a phone
that
line.
is correct.
Okay. Yep. Bob,
Yeah, I just want to say, Brian, I'm on the committee that negotiates with the police, and we talked a lot about cell phones and all that. And there's some particular issues with the police that require them to have cell phones as part of their job, because it's necessary, because they're out of radio contact sometimes. And we decided it's a complicated issue. There was some reasons to give them the phones, to support the phone. There's some reasons to not do that, but we decided to do that. But certainly, I think that the police are different than the treasurer in the regard that they need cell phones as part of their job. So I'd just like to know why you think that the cell phone would be something that should be provided as part of your job, if you have one anyway. I mean, you use it. You do have a phone in your office, of course.
Of course. So the way I kind of counter that is that the town of Shutesbury, which I guess I'll preface this with that I very much love my job with the town, and I am very grateful and appreciative to be employed in the municipality. But the town of Shutesbury has essentially, like most Western Mass towns, has a part-time treasurer who is really doing a full-time job in a part-time capacity due to budgetary restraints that exist across many of the smaller towns in the side of the state. And in order to really successfully accomplish that job, you need someone that's available at all times. You often have a perfect example last night was an employee of the school who was working till 7 and really needed to talk about some of their benefits. So I was available to them at 6:30 to have that discussion, but that discussion obviously didn't take place in the office building. It's a discussion that took place, away. And a part of that is that I have the town's email forwarded to my phone at all times. I answer text messages and phone calls at any given moment. I even have a separate line on my cell phone so that taxpayers, it's pretty rare. You don't typically, as a treasurer, have a lot of interaction with taxpayers. The only time would be if they were in tax title, but really so that I am available at all times for employees. And I do want to preface that I don't want the town to buy me a phone itself. I think that's kind of a hindrance and kind of a way that many corporations have gone away from, and really just offering a small reimbursement to their employees who do utilize their phones for work. But I'm definitely not arguing that I think my phone is as relevant to me as a police officer. And I certainly wouldn't want to go on record with that type of comparison.
Becky,
As somebody who blows up Ryan's phone at day and night on the weekends, I will attest that he does respond to all questions, all times. And if we were restricted to the hours that he was in the office, it would be probably 10 out, less than 10 hours. So to avoid, I mean, without that lifeline, I would not have 10% of the access I currently have. And I'm able to get information to all departments and to all employees and reach out if anybody comes to the door with a problem. I text Ryan or email, and I hear back within 5 minutes. And I think the $65 a month would be well spent in continuing that availability and practice.
Okay, Melody and then Bob.
Yes, first of all, I apologize for being late. I had a meeting for work and then I had to drive back home. But in any case, coming in on this discussion, I just want to note that when I worked in New York City, my employer gave me a phone, and I think they did so grudgingly. And one of the reasons they told us that they did it was because at the time, at least, and I don't know if that's true now, we need to check this out, but it was an IRS regulation that if the employer expects to have contact access to an employee 24/7, they have to provide the means of communication for it. So my employer gave us phones because it was required by the IRS, because they wanted 24/7 access to us. So just, this was a couple of years ago, and I don't know if that's still per the IRS, and we'd have to look it up, but I mean, that would be an argument as well. If that's the expectation, then you know, for those reasons, I think the IRS had that requirement, at least at that time.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say, despite whether IRS may have required it for your job particularly, but I just think about this now for the town of Shutesbury. We're not a major corporation in New York City. We're a small town. You know, we've got a lot of people in town that have cell phones. Becky has a cell phone, for example. Every official that's paid by the town has a cell phone, I assume. And you know, the argument can be made for all of them. I'm sure that we should provide them with the phone. That's number one. Number two, you know, I have a cell phone. I've got good coverage. I've got a Verizon account. I pay $30 a month for my cell phone. And that gives me plenty of data and plenty of coverage. And hey, if I were expecting my boss to pay for part of my cell phone because he needs me to use it at work, I wouldn't expect him to pay for the whole thing, because after all, I have it for my own private use as well. So $30 a month gives me a Verizon account, a prepaid Verizon account, which gives me everything I need. I mean, I don't know, I've never even come close to maxing it out. So I don't know why $68 would have to be paid for a cell phone. And frankly, I also think, and again, I am a frugal person on this committee, but we all the employees have cars, and they need their cars or they couldn't go to work. I mean, this argument is rather specious to me. I think that it's really good that Ryan, is responsive to calls on his phone, and I'm really appreciative of that. But and that he's not punching a clock and then basically disappearing. But I don't think it's a good idea for us to start to basically go down the slippery slope of providing cell phones for all town employees. That's my opinion.
Becky and Melody, are you still, is that your hand up from before, or are you're still, okay, yeah. Okay,
Well,
so
I
Becky,
just wanted to respond to what Bob said.
okay, so why don't we go with Melody first then, and then
Yeah,
Becky?
definitely.
Okay,
So I just wanted to say that it had nothing to do with the fact that I was in New York or the size of my company. I think that really was an IRS requirement. And the reason that you can't make the same argument about cars is because you cannot deduct or be reimbursed for commuting costs. So that's really irrelevant. But I think that the IRS requirement was regardless of, whether you're in New York, whether you have, 20 employees or 200 employees. I think it had to do more with employer access. So that's, and I'm not necessarily arguing, that we pay the whole thing. I mean, I think that Bob does have a point, but I do think that we need to pay attention to what the IRS requires.
Becky.
Okay, I'm in the office much more regularly than most of my part-timers. My part-timers have full-time jobs, other jobs somewhere else. And we benefit by that through reduced, number of hours that we pay them. So when they extend their day to pay, to be available to us, I really appreciate that. Ellen McKay is in the office for her work week and then she's gone. She typically, you know, if I ever call her, it's probably at home. Gail Weiss, it's a rare occasion, but I do call Gail on occasion, but she's has a consistent schedule and I usually don't have as many questions. I think it's the nature of Ryan's job because it's personnel. He's managing the health insurance and benefits for 50 people, all the school employees, all the town employees, and then the retirees have a high demand on him as well. Getting people set up, could be a very dicey situation if he does not stay in contact. They could lose their, sometimes they could lose their health insurance when they are switching on to Medicare. There's so much time sensitive information that the treasurer handles that is not true of our other employees. I myself potentially could have justified that, but making that request, I know that David Ames made the request and I 20 years ago to get a cell phone. I have not adopted that practice. I have had people tell me I really should have contracted for it in my contract. I have chosen not to, but I think there's a very difference in the amount of hours I am at one location as a full-time employee for the town. The difference is being able to support our part-timers, and I find this to be a valid request. Even the cost, I don't know anyone but Bob that has a $35 plan. I know you're very frugal and I appreciate that. I would have gone over that plan many times. So mine is closer to, it's $100 a month, a little bit over. And so I find the $65 request reasonable.
Melody,
Yes, I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but I just looked it up and Massachusetts is one of a handful of states that require employers to reimburse employees for cell phone use that's work related. Massachusetts is one of, I believe, 10 states. We'd have to look that up. And that reimbursement is not taxable income.
If I could, I can't see who's in charge of letting me speak, so let me raise my hand.
It's Jim Walton.
Thanks, Jim.
Jim, would you like Brian's?
The only reason why I chose to include this on this budget sheet rather than that of a personnel dialogue is because it's not considered pensionable, it's not benefited, so it doesn't get included in your your salary payout. Otherwise, I would have gone the personnel board type of route to have this discussion versus that of the finance committee, even though I do personally feel it's more of a dialogue pertinent to the actual work that takes place in the office versus that of an expense. But that is why I did include it on this, because you're not allowed to include it in your earned wages.
just a question. How did the $65, how did that number become the proposed number?
I chose that number because that's what the police is paid out. So I recognize that through some research or dialogue or conversation that had already taken place through the municipality, that Shutesbury had obviously come to an agreement that this was a fair amount to pay for phone reimbursement. But like I said at the beginning, I'm not stuck on any specific number. I just went with, I try to be as fair as possible, and I didn't want to negotiate in anything that wasn't what was already taking place in the municipality.
AJ,
Yeah, I think just occurs to me that this is one of those things that we should, however we decide on or whatever we decide on this issue, I think this is one of those areas where we probably should have like a clear reimbursement policy that is actually written and available, because I think that's, it could get into sort of tricky areas where I think we've got a good justification in this case for why to support the idea that of Ryan's request, but we should actually kind of clarify and write down what are the factors that make it appropriate in this case. And I think that should be sort of a set policy, and we should do some research into what Melody was finding to make sure that that policy is in line with whatever Massachusetts requires.
Susie and George.
So I think that's a good idea, and I would have guessed that's a personnel policy, even if it's not about taxable wages. The personnel board can sort of look over the different jobs that are done in town and come up with a policy. And I think we could, Ryan said this was a point of discussion. I think we could even choose to do it for this year and then get the policy and then make an adjustment if the policy that they come up with is changed.
George.
I'll bring it up at the next personnel board meeting.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I agree with what Susie said. I guess the only question for me is the number. The number seems like a pretty high number to me that we have in here now.
I was trying to, without looking like I'm not paying attention, pull up what my actual cell phone bill is. Because if you take out all the fees and everything, I just know what the monthly cost is that comes in, but I don't actually know how it breaks down versus the cost of my physical phone. So when he brought it up with what he pays, it did make me kind of curious. So if you bear with me a moment, I'm happy to provide or to see if I think that number is unrealistic. Because like I said, I really don't know the dialogue that took place amongst the police and how they came to that determination.
And I don't want to tie up too much of our time on this one particular topic.
If it was $35 that Bob says, then it would be $30 a month, be $360 a year. It's not worth us debating now. If it turns out we should analyze and see what the real price is and adjust the budget for FY24, but I don't think it's worth discussing now. And we can even change it partway through the year if it's a decrease and the money just goes back to free cash. We're talking about $360 right now.
No, it's
At most.
$65. It's $780.
Right. And Bob was saying 65 versus 35, 30. That's all. I'm just saying 12 months, that's 360. So the most we're going to save, if Bob's number is accurate, is $360. It's not worth talking about with all these other lines we have to look at.
Yeah.
Do we have to discuss this now, or can we move on and discuss this later before we vote on the budget?
That's perfectly fine. Like I said in the beginning, I'm comfortable with it simply being a point of discussion. I feel confident that the finance committee will adjust the line items as they feel is necessary based on the dialogue that we have. So, I'm happy to table that discussion from here and move forward with the rest of the budget lines.
Great.
Okay, any other questions on the treasurer budget? Okay, Ryan, we want to move on to the next one.
Yes, so the next one would be your tax title budget. So I don't know if you want to pull. We have not expended, so I'm requesting the 8,500. This is what was requested last year. We have not expended much this year. I think we're only at like.
You said 8,500.
Correct.
I wonder if you had, we still, I guess we're still looking at the police, the treasurer budget.
No,
Oh,
the
maybe
tax
not.
title expense.
That's what you're seeing on your screen?
I don't see the screen share anymore. I thought that.
I'm sorry, I'll do it.
Oh, okay, so we're not sharing this one.
It's only one number. There's no reason to share.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So we haven't expended much of that yet. However, we have had a few extra properties going in, and working with Ellen, my plan will be to go through the tax title process to try to get, we've had a few properties. The pandemic, I think, has made some financial challenges for some people, and I've had some phone tag conversations with some of the citizens, which unfortunately, if there isn't follow through with payment plans, you do obviously have to go through the process. So I'm expecting there to be some fees that we'll utilize. So I would like to see this level funded. Obviously, the goal anytime that we go through tax title is to try to collect the funds back to the town, but I don't believe that the municipality is in the business of taking homes for people. I try to work with them and try to collect payments and see if we can not get to that point. We do just have some habitual offenders who find themselves in tax title annually, pay it off in full once they get to the very last stage. And, you know, it does cost time and it costs money, but that is kind of the nature of the business.
Yeah, Ryan, we did plug in 8,500 for this current year, but we also had over 13,000 balance from prior year. So
Yes.
there's a total of about 22,000.
Yes, we were doing really, really well. We had knocked down the tax title a lot. I think we only had like 4 or 5 properties in there. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we have substantially more in tax title now than we did when we were comfortable with that line item. I would probably be asking for a little more if we didn't already have so much in the budget, but I feel comfortable that we're fine where we are to accomplish what we need to. And I'm a little nervous to see how this next tax season goes.
Okay, we have, see, George's hand is up.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jim, you basically said what I was going to say, and that is, if we've got 22,000, 21 something sitting in tax title and we're rolling over the unspent portion each year, it seems to me 8,500, that's going to put us up to $29,000. Just seems high to me. I was thinking similar to the unemployment conversation where we have an amount that we put in each year. It gives us a nice hefty balance so that we're covered. It sounds like we're maybe a little too robust on this one. And I wonder if we can drop the 8,500 down, given the balance being so high.
You certainly could, as long as the expectation is possible that we could expend a decent amount of money and that we might have to revisit that in the following year. With the nature of the pandemic, you weren't allowed to go through the tax title process, which really changed the expenditures that could take place from that line item, which is why it's kind of padded, if you will, because it really tied the hands of municipalities and actually being able to do anything. We are in a position now where we can go through the legal process needed in order to recoup funds for the municipality. But I don't fully believe that I would expend that line item this year. So if it makes sense for the budgeting purposes to leave it be, or maybe, you know, put a couple $1,000s in there so that it's not completely wiped off your chart here as you navigate filling the budget each year, I think we would be okay.
Yeah, I'm just talking about lowering it. I don't want to eliminate it, but it's possible that we could get by if we did 6,000 every year, given that we have a good starting point.
That is possible. Yeah, I'm not going to argue that.
I think we had Becky's hand was up and then Bob.
Brian, I know the per hour rate is extremely high with the tax title lawyer, and he's the best and very efficient, but what do you estimate the cost for an 1 year of processing for a tax title case, and how many cases do you think you have?
I honestly don't have, that's one of the only files that is held on the old desktop in the town hall. And I just don't have that with me right now. I feel confident that we have enough where I could probably expend what I want to put into it this year. I feel confident that we'd probably be able to expend around $8,000 or so if we were to be kind of aggressive with the tax title. And I am concerned that it's kind of, we've had a lot go into it. Whereas, like I said, for a couple of years, I really wasn't worried about it. It was very small. We had some people making payments. You had your usual people going in and out. But the past year has changed the trajectory for a lot of people. I don't have the number with me, unfortunately.
Okay.
Bob.
I might be asking the same question, Ryan, but maybe not, so I'll ask it anyway. What would you expect it would cost you, let's say in a tough scenario this year, we had to do a lot of tax title work. What would you, because we do have a fairly substantial balance in there now. Would that cover it without additional monies put in?
Oh, yes, I absolutely think that the balance in there right now, I definitely think would cover any cost of tax title work that I could go into this year. I'm a firm believer, it kind of similar to what Becky said earlier with the conservative thought process. I just don't believe in funding something at zero because I know that I can get through with what's in there now. I think it's similar to the way I recommend people build their personal budgets. If you're used to spending a certain amount, you should continue to put that in that kind of as a placeholder.
Yeah, but except that if you do find that your balance is getting substantial, you might trim back And you might even have a 0 year if that was useful, because it's not going to eliminate the line, certainly if we did fund it with $0 this year. But I would like to suggest we fund it with 2,000 or some number like that. I think we'll be in really good shape. And we can look at it next year and see what it looks like at that point. I don't know if that makes sense to any other members.
Yeah, I guess I have a similar question. Right now, we've got $21,000 and we're looking at potentially adding another 8,500, and that gets us at 30,000. 30,000. What do we think is a healthy number to be holding in this account?
A healthy number? That's kind of that's a tough one for me to answer. I'm not going to
Yeah.
lie. Realistically, I think you should probably have somewhere between, like sitting in there somewhere between 15 and 20,000. But like I said, I feel confident that I'll be able to expend this 8,500. So I'm kind of just anticipating that we'll be back down to, we'll be kind of at the cap of what I'm comfortable with, which is the 20,000 of sitting in there.
Susie?
This is not one of those crystal ball things. So I want to just suggest we go with 5,000 and see what happens and be prepared to make something different.
I'm good with that.
Does anybody on the committee have an issue with 5,000 in there? Okay. We'll look at switching that number to 5,000, Becky,
Okay,
and we can move on.
Okay, so next I have the short-term borrowing. And so I'm asking for $5,000 to be put into the short-term borrowing line. I know the town is talking about a lot of potential projects on the horizon, and I just want to make sure that we're prepared financially to cover those costs.
Can you tell us what those will be?
What the borrowings are,
Yeah,
or
well, I mean, this year we've spent nothing and we're budgeted 2,000. So you're thinking next year we're going to need 5,000 because we have things going on. What would they be?
we did just, you probably can't, it's, when did the expense report come out? January.
Here, the one I'm looking at is dated January 25.
Yeah, we just expended about 600 or so out of there in February, so it's not reflecting on there right now.
Okay.
But you, I'm pulling up my debt schedule right now, so bear with me 1 second.
You saw it as the same as last year, but in fact, last year was only 2,000. So that's part of.
Yes, this is one of those ones where I didn't go back to see that it was actually reduced from, which is what I'm taking notes on aggressively this time. To see that, oh, well, what I wanted didn't actually happen, and I just never went to see that it didn't get budgeted that way, so.
sorry, Ryan, we do that a lot.
That, you know, I should be used to it with how things went in Orange, but apparently I didn't learn my lesson. Okay, so I know that we are talking about potentially doing.
The bonding for the culvert will be coming up for sure. The
Yeah.
bond on the roof, not the bond, but the borrowing.
I
Is it
have
culvert?
I have the roof still listed. I have the culvert, and I have accountant software, and I have library italicized as a potential.
I don't think the library will be this year, even if it does move forward, it'll probably be FY '24.
Okay.
If it moves forward.
But
And-
everything you,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut someone off.
no, that's okay. I'm sorry. Everything you mentioned is going to go out to borrowing. But short-term interest is really, I always thought for short-term cash needs. Are you saying that we might start some of these projects and before we get the bonding, we're going to need to borrow on the side to keep the projects going?
So when we do these borrowings, our financial advisor and UFASI, which is the team that we utilize for the borrowing, there's costs associated with them. So they range between like $600 and $1,000 when you work with them to initiate any of these. Usually there's a couple $100 costs as well when you like pay one off as well, because they do the bulk of the back end work to accomplish that. And we do have one for the broadband that's going to be paid down in full this coming fiscal year. So I've included that as well in my thought process, if you will.
So so you're saying that this is more than just for interest for borrowing?
Not interest, it's just fees.
Fees.
Right.
See on
And
the
you're going
chart
to use this short-term borrowing line for that?
for fees.
Correct. For
Yeah.
fees, yes.
Yeah, so that's part of the answer is you need money not just for the interest, but also for the fees.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's where the bulk of the money is in this. It's the workload that gets put into it from the borrowing team.
All right, no, I get it. And so next
I'm
year's an
sorry, I
unusual
should have been
year.
more clear about that.
That's okay. So next year's an unusual year. So next year, you think you need 5,000. Do you think the following year, if we go back to normal, you'd ask for 2,000 again?
I think I've always asked for 5,000. I think that my
Oh, okay.
predecessor asked for 5, and I'm just continuing in that nature. I feel
And I'm the one who changes it to 2.
yes. So I think we're probably then honestly we'd probably be fine with 4, and then probably can go back 2 to 3 the following year. Like I already can't even hear the 2 number. I guess we could probably go down to 2 the following year comfortably.
Okay.
Great.
Does
Jim.
this account not roll forward? I'm not seeing any rolled forward, is that right?
Right. We haven't done any rolling forward because we haven't needed to.
Jim. These fees, Brian, these are fees paid to like Unibank, for example.
Yes.
Yeah. And the short-term ban for the broadband was paid off last August, so that won't be of concern this year, as you know.
So the short term, we have one more fiscal year with the final borrowing for broadband.
No, that you.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, so what happened is we thought that we were paying it off. I thought that we were paying it off in full, but the actual result of the dialogue between finance committee and broadband team was that we would borrow one more year for it. We would renew the ban one more time and then pay it off. So that is exactly what we ended up doing. So we actually did pay it off, realized that that was not correct, and then borrowed for the final year. So we still do have to pay for that in this coming year.
Oh, so you see, so after paying it off, we borrowed again?
Yes.
Oh, that's news to me.
It just happened probably maybe 3 weeks ago.
I see.
Yeah, it came up when Gail and I
Okay.
were
Yeah,
making
that's
sure
right.
that numbers were matching.
Does she mention that?
Yeah.
Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think my impression is that we had a policy in this committee to level fund the budget this year. And I think we should just level fund this line unless there's some urgent reason why we should change it, raise it. I think we have a policy. We should just follow the policy unless there's an argument for us to change it this year. And I think otherwise we should just keep it at $2,000 like we did last year.
Susie?
I think we then would be prepared to meet any unexpected expenses through the FinCom reserve fund for this line.
So you're agreeing with Bob and that we, as a backup, we would, we could dip into the reserve fund if necessary. Is that what you're saying?
I think so.
No?
He did.
Yep.
Okay. Finance committee, are we all okay with the proposed 2,000, keeping this at 2,000 as the current fiscal year?
Yeah, it's small enough. FinCom reserve will be able to cover that difference.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Becky, can we make that adjustment too?
Well, it's not really an adjustment. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not sure what you work off of. You don't work off of these budget requests?
I do, but except for Ryan and I have had lively discussions, and I've had them with Gabe, and I think the compromises have been working successfully, except for the ones that Ryan has pointed out are needed. And I think it's a backup plan. If he needs 4,000, he's going to have 4,000 through the FinCom reserve, and that's the important thing, right?
Yeah. 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 Okay.
So next is the OPEB trust budget.
Oh, boy.
I was having the same thoughts.
That should be an easy one.
So my recommendation is to contribute $50,000 to the OPEB trust.
Thank you.
George, yeah,
So where are we with the actuarial study?
We are very close, actually. He just sent me an email yesterday asking for the FY20 estimate for the annual salaries and said that they should have it any day now.
Do you think that it's possible that after reading that report, we might want to do something different?
I honestly, they've
50,000?
they've given me no insight into the potential result of it at all, to be honest with you. So I don't think it would be fair for me to try to insert a personal opinion on it because I wouldn't be making it based off of any
Sure.
logic or reason.
Understood. Yeah, I think the finance committee will just need to talk about this, but
I think there's a very strong possibility that I will have the result before you make final decisions, and I'll be able to share that, and that will hopefully change this. But I obviously didn't want to come with nothing here. So I do feel confident, and I can send him another email today reminding him that we would like it really soon.
is there something changed? Because I thought this was something we expected back in November or December. We expected that.
There were just delays in getting the correct information to and from one another. It's really a matter of gathering exactly what they're looking for. And then I also noticed that they have a different person working on it than I've ever worked on with before. And I don't know if that's a factor or not. I've never worked with this person, and he showed up about halfway through.
so before I'm done, is that a conversation we can have with the actuary? What is the best way? What are the options? I know it's not been in past reports, but do they have suggestions or options how a municipality can close the gap between the current fund balance and the required fund balance?
I can definitely ask. It's not a conversation that I've had with him. I can't imagine that they wouldn't have some guidance. So like I said, I'm going to kind of give a gentle push. So I might as well request some additional
What they say to
information.
that, what their answer is to that. I'd be curious. There a lot of municipalities obviously are in the same position,
Oh, of course.
and they must to some extent be hearing this question from others as well. How am I going to get there? I'm sure it's everybody's first question.
Right.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Susie.
Sorry, quickly on, just as a follow-up on that, would it be appropriate to request a briefing from, whoever's authoring the study? It just seems like, I remember the last time we discussed the last actuarial study, which I think is 3 years old or something like that. And there was like a conversation about like some of the different assumptions that were made. And I kind of remember us not being in a great position to discuss it because we didn't have the information. We didn't know exactly what all of the important assumptions were that went into that.
We did have him come out and give us an overview one of the first years. So hopefully he'll be willing to do it again. What do you think, Ryan? Or are you dealing with somebody completely new?
I mean, Parker he's still there in the person running it. So I'm sure I would be shocked if they said no. So I'm happy to orchestrate that.
That'd be great.
Susie,
I would suggest we set this aside until we get more information, but it's good to know that it's still in the mix of what we have to have in the budget. We just don't know the final information.
yeah, maybe what do we think the current timing is? You said maybe 2 or 3 weeks, we might have more information.
That's definitely the
details.
impression that I've received from them.
Yeah.
I know they included in the email request yesterday was some information from one of the auditors. The auditors are typically very responsive, so I'm sure that they'll have, and I did get the impression that that was the last of what they needed. So I've already responded with the information they requested from me. So I would be shocked if they don't have everything they need very soon.
Okay. Are we okay with keeping this as is for now until we get more feedback from actuarial? All right. We getting close, Ryan?
Oh, we're getting close. So next would be the actuarial budget. So I requested $2,000 to go into that line. Basically, I didn't change the fiscal year there, but their cost is estimated to still be around the $6,000, but we have some time in case that does change. So I feel comfortable with the 2,000 now. It's possible that when we go the following fiscal year, they may have an increase in prices and we might have to do a larger contribution like we just recently did. I think we did a little over 4,000 in order to get us caught up there. But I think in this off year, we would be fine with just 2.
The current balance is 6,200 in the budget. So with the 2,000, we would be covered for the increases if they happened.
And Becky, how does that compare to last year?
Last year, we had 2,000 in the budget. We had a carry forward of 4,200. That's how we got this, the 6,200.
So we're gonna maintain $2,000 in the budget. Is that what we're thinking? Okay, good.
And this is, Ryan, did you say this is about a $6,000 bill
Yes.
when it comes due? Yeah.
Well, it has been in the past. We're just uncertain of the new pricing. It was 3 years ago.
Okay, and this is every 3 years? We see
Yeah.
this every 3 years. Okay. All right.
It's possible that we'll get the new bill and we'll realize we need to next year maybe increase it to 500 or 1,000. But for now, there's no reason to believe otherwise.
Okay. Any concerns from the committee on that? Holding this at 2,000. So we're going to keep one the same? All right.
Looks like it.
And we budgeted what Ryan actually requested.
Look at that. 2. I got
Wow.
1 for 2 years in a row. That's pretty good.
Mistake.
So
This way, we'll get you health insurance.
yeah, that's why that one's last.
Yeah.
So the Medicare tax is the next one. So I believe all I did was a simple 3% increase, just to assume for a COLA. But now I do like to double check what my notes say. So
I'm
yeah,
just,
the
not-
request is 43,900.
and that's not an increase of 43,000.
That's a one.
No, that's not the increase.
1,300.
Yeah, and we're currently at 42,064. So that's very reasonable.
It is a question on the 3%. Does that number, is that a number the government calculates based on inflation?
The 3% was typically what we see for annual increases amongst the towns. So it's basically my way of looking at a 3% increase in the cost of the Medicare because it's based directly on what the wages are that are paid out. So if you feel confident that the negotiations are going to go really strongly in one direction, then you could argue that Medicare could change in a different, could go down, up or down. But 3% is usually your safe one from my experience here anyway.
Okay. Bob?
We're looking at, this is Medicare payroll tax we're talking about, Ryan?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Okay, any questions, concerns regarding the proposed 3% increase? 2 in a row.
All right. Dun, dun, dun. Health insurance time. Look, she's got the screen ready to go. Look, I've cut back drastically on this. I include one family and one individual. I think when I first started, I had like 3 families and like 5 individuals joining on. So, and one of the benefits you do have right now is I do believe that we're actually in a good position with the health insurance budget for, at the moment, I think we're just shy of 50%. And obviously that's not where we're at in the budget cycle. So we only did do, I think we came down last year too. So
Yeah, right.
yeah, we did 520 last year.
Yeah.
So I am compared to, so this increase is what I had actually wanted last year, but it looks like a drastic increase compared to what was actually budgeted. Health insurance is the greatest, largest, most unpredictable cost that we have. And that's why I aim really high towards it. But I respect the budget process and the need to try to accomplish the goals of all departments to better serve the public at all times. So,
And this is a number that I check in with Ryan through the year, as we get closer to the budget season, to see if it, if it's possible to reduce the increase there. I keep in conversation with Ryan, attempting to do that, talking about employee changes or expected changes. So even if he's starting with this request, if if we do not get an increase. Okay, so I think, Ryan, I've been hearing that we might not have a 2% increase. It might be 0. And if
that's correct.
so if that's true, which you wouldn't have known when you originally calculated this,
That is correct.
if we kept the 520,000, would you be okay?
Well then, I think it's possible. I guess my largest concern is that I do know it's really hard. So obviously health insurance and conversations regarding personnel and their health insurance choices are very hard to talk about because you have to tiptoe around saying the wrong things. But you take into consideration employees who might be leaving just simply, they're ready to retire, or changes in the learning format in the school system, the way we're navigating society now. You run the risk of someone who has been a dependable person on your insurance plan as a single, or someone who's just never taken health insurance here, and then hiring typically someone younger starting off with a family, and just the cost can change so quickly that's kind of where my hesitation comes from. I think that if you were to take the 520 that we have in there now and at least add in the cost of one family and one individual, I would be a lot more comfortable. But at the end of the day, if FinCom feels comfortable that they could move money as needed, then I'm comfortable with the 520, but it does make me nervous. It made me nervous then too. So, but we are at only 49%. So it's kind of proving me wrong right now, which is a real pleasant position to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, that was gonna be my question. We're running a bit behind our current budget for this year. Yeah. Susie, and then Bob.
Do we know what kind of rate increase we got last year? This is assuming a 2% for the coming year. Do we know what last year's rate, how it went up?
They
0.
actually did not do an increase last year.
We've had zeros for almost 6 years, I think.
Yeah, so the idea that there might not be an increase in the rates seems getting thinner on thinner ice as we go along.
But they've already decided not to have a rate increase for this year.
Yeah,
Oh.
and forgive me because I had prepared this budget before we had the meeting. I think the meeting was either last week or the week before. It may have been last week. But I still think the 520 is low. I'd be a lot more comfortable at like 540.
Bob.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think we added a family and individual last year, didn't we, Ryan? In our
Last year
calculations.
things were tight. Yeah, we did.
And so now here we are, and we're in good shape, and there was no rate increase. And I think that we should level fund this because that's our policy. And I think that the situation kind of supports that, because we did add people for a buffer last year. We have that in reserve. I think we're ahead of schedule on our expense report for that reason. And so I think we should go forward with a level funded budget for this. I know Ryan wants to be really conservative and careful about it. I understand his philosophy, but we have another consideration, which is trying to control the budget. And I think for that reason, we should keep this level funded.
Okay, we've got
I don't know. I did hear the chief of police mention earlier that her plan is to possibly be hiring. I don't know what types of positions those would be looking at. I feel confident that we'll be hiring for the highway department, the fire department. I think the school might be looking right now as well. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Susie.
It's interesting to say that by level funding, we're controlling the budget in a situation we don't have control over. who gets hired, whether they need health insurance, and whether that changes our overall table. I understand wanting to hold still, but I'm not thinking that that's the same as controlling the budget in that circumstance.
George,
I'm wondering, a good analysis would be to, if we had a count of all the employees and we had a count of how many family plans and how many individual plans we had, then we could have an estimate of what our gap is to the worst possible case scenario. I know it's a little pie in the sky, but it gives us a better sense of where we are. For me, I don't know if I want to level fund it. I'm thinking 20,000 to the 520, just because of the uncertainties, specifically with I think the police department is a good example. But for me, it would be more helpful to know, what rate are we insuring people in our town? Do most people have family or do most people have individual? Anyways, that said, I'm uncomfortable going with level funding, but I also think 553 is too much. I'd want to increase it by one family plan just to cover us in case that police chief was to want a family plan. So I'd like to raise it a little. So I guess I'm responding to
Becky?
Bob's comment.
Yeah, Becky and then Bob.
I think the police department currently has 2 full-time employees, and hopefully as we move into stabilizing and hiring a police chief, potentially, that would be a new potentially family policy. And so I think if you were to add the 16,360, it might be a reasonable thing to do.
16,360 on top of 520.
Yes.
But
Either
Bob,
that or go to 530.
540.
I just want to make a point that, it's a good time to bring up the issue that when we talk about hiring new employees, whether it be for the police department or the highway department or any other part of our operation here in the town, that we should be aware that this number here is affected by it. It's part of the cost of making that hire. So when we consider budgets which include the increase in labor or employees, let's be sure that we all understand that there's more costs than the budget item in that the department's request. This is a big number, and this number is tied directly to those hires. Just everybody knows this, but it's not obvious when we're studying the budgets, and I think it's a good time to point that out.
yeah, Ryan.
Yes. I did want to share that I know of at least 2 people on our individual plan who intend to move to a family plan as soon as open enrollment hits.
all right, so that's $20,000 addition.
And that should use up the buffer in our current budget for the end of the year, because that'll be 2 months, 2 months.
Right. I think it's probably, what is it? Where are we right now? February, March? Yeah, usually around end of April. So it would probably hit May.
So that's $20,000 right there. So you have that change about, and the likely hiring of a 3rd person in the police department at some point. Full-time.
Okay, so I see a number of proposals sort of zeroing in around 540. 540 for now.
I think
So-
if you add in, Jim, the 20,000 plus the additional family plan puts you over what he's requested at 553.
No,
But we're running under budget so far this year.
Right, but if we have 2 policies that add $10,000, that'll be $20,000. We'll only see 2 months of that in this budget, so we'll only see like an extra 4,000 this year, but it'll potentially hit next year. But you don't know what other changes will occur. It's always, a crapshoot.
And won't the 553 go down by 2% if we know the rate isn't increasing?
Yes. Yes, because the 553 it did assume that we would have the 2% increase, and we are not going to have it.
So that'd be 543?
It's tough. I wasn't aware of the police until the conversation earlier, and I mean, it's a hard thing to predict. It really is. You know, you can base it off of the bill where you are now, but you know, one of the attractive qualities of a municipality is that they offer good benefits. The pay rates are usually on the lower side when you compare to the private sector, but the benefits such as the health insurance is really kind of the saving grace when it comes to attracting applicants. So I do see, although you obviously should take that into consideration whenever you choose to hire within the town or create new positions, as he was referencing earlier, but you do want to keep in mind that that is a part of the appeal. So it is an area where you do see a higher percentage of employees take advantage of the insurance option than you would see typically in the private sector. Especially if you hire someone who's already getting health insurance in the private sector from their spouse, they would more than likely switch their family over.
What percentage of the premium does the employee pay?
The employee pays 25%. Yeah, which is very comparable to the municipalities in our area.
So these costs that you're showing are the town's portion.
Correct.
So the real cost is more like, a family plan is more like 21,000 a month, a year, sorry.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah, a year,
A
a
month.
year, sorry.
We have to close our doors if it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in that, I'm pretty sure. Yeah,
That's all right,
I mean,
Ryan. I
they're
just wanna
very
understand.
costly.
I don't need to know the exact one. I'm just,
Yeah, you'd be looking at around 22,000 if they got, and this is based on the HMO, which is the less expensive plan, because that is without a doubt the more popular option. But of course, we do have more expensive options as well.
But you also have a dual plan, so people who are married but don't need a family plan. So there's an in-between cost that is lower than the family plan.
Yes. Which is a really nice added benefit from the trust. It does offer a lot of cost savings.
Yeah.
I feel I've said all I
Okay,
can say on the budget, and I really would kind of have to trust your judgment from here, to be honest.
with
'Cause I
the,
don't really take any of it personally. Like, I'm not going to sign off and be like, I can't believe they did this to my health insurance budget. I feel like it's really just my role to present how I view it and how I feel. And then I trust your professional judgment from there to look out for the best interests of the town.
so I think if you guys want to just take all the notes and understanding you have now, and as we work through the budget, we'll at a minimum of 520, if there's, depending everything else that happens in this budget, we'll see what would make sense to raise it, but we can discuss it further at another time.
Good.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah,
Yes.
yep. Okay,
Thank
is
you.
that your last one, Ryan?
That's my last one.
Wow. Well done.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I took much better notes on what actually did happen to the budget this time, and I will keep a closer eye to see what happens further so that next year I can do a better comparison for you, and I'll be sure to change the chart to include that as well.
Great.
Yeah, well done. Thanks for all the time, all of the detailed explanation, all the answers to all the questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and all the hard work you do. I appreciate it.
Much appreciated.
Take care.
Take care.
Hi, thank you.
Becky?
Yeah?
I'd like to ask you to counsel the departments when they come to us to give us a historical kind of consideration, like, for example, in the case of Ryan, he wasn't prepared to give us last year's numbers, so it was kind of confusing to sort this out. Would have been a lot better if he came properly prepared, and obviously he didn't know that. So I'm asking you to help him understand that in the future.
Okay,
Yeah, along the same lines, I guess he was under the presumption that he was operating under a budget that he proposed last year. So I don't know what the process is when we finalize these budgets, how word gets back to the different managers on where we ended up.
I gave Ryan a copy of the budget. As we were towards the end, I gave him a copy of the final budget, so he had it to look at and review.
Okay,
And mentioned that we didn't fund it. We have this ongoing thing, because I haven't funded all his requests. We haven't funded them all since he started, because the first year he was even more conservative than Gabe had been, and she always left a lot of, they liked, the numbers can get very large, but when you're in the reality of trying to balance a budget with very little increases, and the difference, and the final margins that you can cut into, it doesn't make sense to be that conservative. And the committee and I have brought forward changes to the budgets every year.
Yeah, you do that, and it's a matter of course that happens. And yeah, he should understand that and be
Oh, yeah.
prepared to work with last year's actual budget numbers.
Yeah.
Because that's just then he's in the picture about where we're at.
And I
Alright.
did send out a form to all departments that had 2 columns, include the FY22 and the FY23.
We asked
And
for it in our letter.
yeah,
I'm sure you did. I'm sure, absolutely. I don't know, no doubt. But he should be put in the picture a little bit. Maybe emphasize that he should be better prepared next year. That's all I'm asking.
sure.
all right.
I'll call him I'll text him right now, Bob.
Yeah, do that.
Get your money's worth out of that phone.
Does he have to pay texting? Do we have to pay texting rates if we ask him to do that?
All right, let's try an easy one. Let's go over the minutes from last meeting.
Okay.
I didn't have any changes from my side.
Nor did I.
I had a question on one item. I gotta find where it is. When we had the conversation with, I definitely have a question. We had a conversation with the assessor, and he's telling us that he's now required. All right, so I'm in the assessor section, which is number 2, assessor budget review. And if you look at C and D, he talked about how he has to go to third parties now to value personal property and utility property. And did we ask him, does that save us money on the reval line? Do we know to what extent? I can't remember if we actually brought that up with him.
Yes, we collected quite a bit more in taxes but he said it was like 3,000 and it was a break even, I believe.
Said that's what he said exactly.
But
And he said he could possibly do it, but it was going to cost him as much money to do it, or time.
But because he doesn't have to do it anymore, does that mean we're over budgeting on the reval line?
Good question.
No,
That's a question. I don't remember us talking about that. I mean, I
No,
wish
he
I had
was
asked it
gonna-
then.
he was learning how to do it so he could save money. So he wasn't going to have to ask for the increase of the 3,000 for the consultant. But then when the state is not allowing him to do it, he had to ask for the 3,000.
I understand that, Becky, but I was wondering though, it's something that, how was it getting done? I mean, we haven't always been using a third party, so these costs are new.
Right.
Right.
So then the cost valuing those particular properties, we were doing internally, and that was getting paid for out of the reval line. And
But
so I'm wondering if there's,
but a lot of these properties hadn't been getting done. The personal property, not all of it had been getting done every year till Kevin came.
so you're
So
telling me
we
you
were
don't think
picking,
that,
no, because we picked up new revenue we hadn't picked up before.
wow.
He
Okay.
did, Ryan went, Kevin went
Isn't it
out.
the
and-
utilities one? Sorry.
Sorry?
Isn't it the utility poles that we're talking about here?
No, personal property,
Personal property?
there's 2
That's
things.
being done by
Personal-
contract on this line?
Yes,
the recap?
both of them, personal property and the utilities.
Yeah, I thought the utilities was part of it, and he said he wasn't allowed to do it. So,
Oh, there's two separate ones.
Becky,
Personal,
I think you were finishing your point. I don't think you were finished.
I was trying to hear which question was,
Okay.
which Bob was questioning, so I'm a little confused now too.
I just thought, I thought I recalled that he was talking about the utility company's property. And that's what had been done through the state requirement for a contractor, an independent contractor. Maybe I'm mistaken.
That's a second issue on top of the personal property, like the contents of a vacation home or, you know, that kind of personal property.
but that's done by Kevin. That's not done by this consultant, right?
Oh, it is a third party as well.
So it's third party for both
Yes,
the
Correct.
utilities and vacation properties and stuff like that.
Yes.
I believe, yes.
Okay.
This
All
has
right,
to be used if they want to pick up new property that they had not been able to find before.
okay.
Right. And Kevin had stated that it was the benefit on the personal property valuation to the town exceeded what we were paying this vendor to do those valuations.
Barely.
Right, barely.
Barely? Yeah.
But that leaves George's question. If we were paying in a line in the budget to do this, why are we still funding that line?
Because we weren't doing the personal property to the extent that we now are. So it wasn't being done out of the old eval line. Kevin has broadened the net of what monies are being collected on personal property. Is that not the question, George?
No, that's it. That's my question. My question is, you're telling me they weren't really doing it. So we weren't incurring costs for that. And so it wasn't budgeted for.
Correct. They weren't doing it to the same extent. There's always been personal property tax, but Ken didn't do it to the extent that Kevin is now doing it. He's doing more of it.
Yeah, and the reval line is not a small line. So I'm just wondering if there's, we can chip something off it.
Oh, really?
Well, that's how he,
I don't know the answer
No,
to that.
'cause
I
he
just,
had- he
I
had
wish I
to-
was thinking of it last week last meeting when we talked to him.
well, we can. send
We can hold that,
ask him
we
to
can hold
come-
that to the, when we get into the budget review. But we're just going over the minutes now. We're just reviewing the minutes.
That's fine, that's fine. But Becky, yeah, if you can just ask him, do you think there's any savings on that line? That would be helpful.
I don't believe he will say so because this line has been building because we've become responsible for more things. The state has shifted the responsibility.
That's all I have. in the minutes.
Consultants.
Okay.
Okay,
that's all I have
Susie.
in the minutes.
So I looked at that minute and I was confused and it doesn't match my notes, but my notes are not a guarantee. So I would suggest that we take these 2 minutes, this part of the minutes and ask Kevin to read them and see if he can clarify it for us. So it'd be 2
C and D.
and 2D. Then I feel more comfortable because I did feel it was confusing.
Okay, so let's send it to AJ. Do you want to
Yeah.
send in a set of the minutes? That's probably the most direct route.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah.
Oh, Susie again.
I think I might have.
You've already
been-
used all your hands up. Use them up.
I think I might have
Hmm.
been semi-comatose. So I thought on 1A that there was that this Gail gave us 2 budgets. One that considered if you buy Vadar for a capital expense of like 22K, then that's what will make the annual fee stay stable for 6 years. But if that
Correct.
doesn't happen, then the expenses were of that were listed on the other proposal is what happens for the year of FY '23.
I think you're right. I mean, we're hoping to go
So,
radar.
yeah.
Radar's the new one.
So I think one thing, I mean, for sure, the fixed annual service fee for the next 6 years is something that would happen if the Vadar system is purchased, right? That we know for sure, because the current system has an increase every year. To
7%.
the
Yeah, so
maintenance.
I guess I would then write point A as just, it's just about the $5,000 for computer maintenance. And then the next part is about the submitting the request, and that's the one that makes the stable annual fee, which is E. Is that right?
Yeah, and what's referred to here, there's a request to capital planning committee.
Yeah, but it's put up against something that would be if as an annual expense without the Vadar. Put in
Susie,
the same paragraph.
can I suggest that we just put in for the last line, that if the capital request is approved, then the following, because that's conditional on that. Would that make it clear?
Well, I guess I would say what's in A, the part that goes on, Gail has submitted, maybe that should be put down with E, because the rest of the expenses are as if in the generally proposed budget.
Yeah. So what I did, Susie, now as we were talking, is I made like a kind of a new bullet under A
Okay.
that starts, Gail has submitted a request to the capital planning committee.
Right.
And then last line of that is if purchased,
Annual service
if
fee.
if request is approved, the annual service fee will be fixed for the next 6 years.
That's clear to me now. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, any other changes? Okay, so we'll hold off on approving these until next meeting, pending
Yeah.
some clarification from Kevin.
Yeah, I'll email him now, yeah.
Okay. Next item we had was the initial fiscal year '23 budget review. And Becky, you're going to walk us through maybe an initial version of
yeah.
this?
This version, I'm just gonna put it up on the screen because I want to spend a little time with George to go over it and check all my figures, if that's okay with everybody. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's hope I can find it. Should be income. Budget. Yeah, somebody has their,
Yeah, some man's talking.
yeah, some man is talking.
Not in my house.
All right, let's see. And there's no one in the building here. Okay. That didn't do what I thought it would. Can everybody see now?
I can see it.
See a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just. All right, so we're moving into FY '23. And I also want to verify all my figures as I did last year with DOR. because we're in this less dicey situation, but it's still kind of a bit confusing. Everybody see, I want to move this over. I can't get. George, why is this out of control? It'll have to do.
Open
can't
the
move
notebooks. What's that about? You got this note on your, see the yellow line? Go to the right, see where it says yes?
I don't
The
see a
question
yellow.
in yellow, you got this open review notebooks. You recently changed, your recent changes were saved. Do you want to continue working where you left
don't
off? There's a
see-
yes button on the right.
I don't see that at all. Where's that?
Really?
Way up high.
Oh, you know why?
Menu bar
Because
below
the-
all the icons.
Not
Down,
that high,
Down.
not that high. There you go.
Right, you're over it. See,
Yeah, now just go all the way to the right
and hit yes.
where it says yes. There you go, right there. Hit that yes.
You might want to read the question before you hit it, but
I know, I really was unsure if I wanted to hit that. See, now look,
Uh-oh.
that probably wasn't the right thing to do, George.
no, Jim said it. I said you read the question first.
Oh, guys, now I gotta start all over.
Can't you reverse it?
Yeah, just hit
the undo.
hit the undo. Way up in the top,
Command Z.
top left
Over the
corner.
word.
Command Z,
Yeah,
right.
Command Z.
or over the Z,
Corner,
over the
undo.
draw. Over the
Top
word
left
draw.
corner, next
Top
to,
left.
yeah, top left corner of the spreadsheet, there's a little squiggly pointing to the left.
Yeah, the
Apple
one
key
that's a
plus Z.
semicircle, I think. She's got Mac, so I'm not 100% sure
Capital-
which one it is.
Are the Apple key plus Z?
Yes.
It's not doing it,
No,
unfortunately.
you're in the wrong, you're not, you're a little, left
I'm gonna
corner.
stop sharing for a second, okay? Let me just try to figure out where my spreadsheet just went, because now it's gone.
Uh-oh.
Oh, now it changed. Now it's telling me it's a read only.
That means you can't damage it.
Wow, how did that all happen? Sorry, guys, just a second. This isn't even the same spreadsheet. It's. Oh, goodness. Well, do you guys want to go on to another topic while I try to sort
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe
out
while,
how I destroyed my budget?
maybe while Becky's working on that, we could talk about, well, see, two nights from now is the, four-town meeting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, AJ.
I'm not sure we have much more to talk about regarding that.
Well, I'd like to talk about what AJ sent a link to the school committee meeting, which was, to me, very gratifying. AJ, they basically said they want the statutory method right now. That was my interpretation. That's what they're going to present.
I thought it was fascinating. I mean, it's, I mean, I even got the sense that the committee members were maybe a little surprised by Superintendent Morris's, I guess, the urgency with which he, pushed for coming to a final permanent assessment method. And I think it's terrific news for us that I think that the superintendent and Doug Slaughter seem to believe that the only viable option for a permanent solution is 100% modified statutory. So I think that's a great development. It was surprising because just in the previous meeting, it seemed like they were inclined to just, sort of kick the can and down the road and just go with the same method. But I still, obviously, I think the one thing that they sort of were underestimating, I think, was the challenge they're going to face in bringing all for, like, the talk was a little bit like, yeah, this is obvious that this is what we need to do. And, it shouldn't be too hard to get the towns to agree to this because we're going to use these grant funds to help
Yeah, accelerate it.
sort of accelerate the process and soften the blow. I think particularly to Amherst. It sounded to me like they
Pelham,
want to be
too.
able to give,
Amherst and
they want to
Pelham.
be able to give Amherst their 2.5% increase. And so it sounded to me like they're going to find, kind of pandemic grant funds that will allow them to accomplish that while, increasing the amount of statutory that's included. But I think they might have been a little bit sort of under playing or underestimating the challenge that they might face.
The resistance they're going to face.
The
yes.
resistance they're going to face, because they were talking about it as just an Amherst issue, and clearly it's a Leverett issue as well. So I don't know. Anyway, those are just some thoughts I had.
But Amherst is still the big dog.
Yeah.
And that's a big change.
They're the one that barks the loudest.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
don't forget
but there's Susie first and then Jim.
I think that some of the difference in the story was the earlier meeting back in January, it was Peter Demling that, as a sort of frustrated school committee member, said, maybe we'll just stay where we are. The administration didn't argue with him. They may have heard him. What I think that happened in the interim includes the use of the ARPA money or whatever money it is, the grant money to help ease it, and the idea that there are problems with the statutory. We experienced some of those problems in the past. And so the administration talking about figuring out guardrails and figuring out what can help remediate some of that, I think that was administrative work and people who had been in with the history of it from the past. And I think that they are working to offer a picture that might be more tolerable. I definitely feel much more positive about it. I think our letter fits in right into the middle of this, where we're saying, let's get this far. We're not talking about stopping, and we're talking about making it a 2-year thing. So I think that really ties in with giving them time to develop those guardrails. And I think having those specific ideas instead of just like, I want it this way, I want it that way, which they're getting from the 4 towns, I think those kind of parts will make this much more feasible.
Speaking to the letter, did that was sent, that was finalized and sent?
Yep, it was, I sent it to, the one thing I didn't know, I sent it to Mike Morris and to Doug Slaughter and Allison, who I thought was the chair of the regional school committee, but it had just changed to Ben Harrington. Allison helpfully gave me his email, and I was able to forward it to him last week as well.
Okay, cool. Jim?
Do you think that the 5%, and that was the limit on the guardrail, do you think that's likely to pass muster? I'm curious about that.
It
What do you
doesn't sound
think?
like it was headed for this year. It's the beginning of thinking it out, and it comes from the past. And I don't know that they're going to try to make it happen this year, but it gives people a view for how things could be moved. And that's what I think we are gaining from.
Yeah, they didn't decide on a percentage. They just threw out 5%, but it's what
It's an
everybody
example.
agreed to.
Well, Mike Morris, pushed that one pretty hard, as I recall.
Yeah.
Oh, the 5%?
Yeah, the 5%.
Well, he used 5%
He used it as an example, but I don't think he
Example,
thought
but
that was the number.
Yeah, well,
The history of that discussion sounded like it went between 4 and 5, maybe even 3, 4, or 5.
When we had a working group, we talked about, and we actually ran numbers using those guardrails to see which towns were affected and how it would work. I think we were using 4%. We might have used 5, but that just needs to be worked out.
Yeah, Bob,
You're on mute.
you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. There was another issue here that was not made clear at that meeting, but it seemed pretty evident to me that Pelham has a substantial increase in its enrollment this year. which all the variable methods that were employed in the spreadsheet showed them having a substantial increase in their assessment because they have more students. So that kind of guardrail, I mean, that can't, we have the 5-year rolling average built into our proposal. And I think that does provide the most, what he called leveling or plastering or smoothing of the assessment, which is why it's there. And I think that Pelham is going to pay more this year, no matter what happens. And personally, I think that this guardrail thing is going to be cumbersome and very difficult to sort out because there's so many variables. I think the system that we've proposed and that we support seem to be supported by the Amherst School Committee and by the administration. And I think it's a good thing. It's a very good thing for the region. It's a good thing for us. So I'm happy.
I think we've essentially had two guardrails. You know, we've had this incremental change every year,
right,
which is in itself a guardrail of some type.
Yeah.
And we've had this 5-year rolling average, which is a guardrail. So I sort of I didn't really accept the argument from Mike on that we need a guardrail. It seems we do have a couple.
Yep, I agree.
George, then Susie, and then AJ.
If they move to 100% modified and use grant funds to get there this year, I am totally open to letting them analyze the possibility of a guardrail. We have nothing to lose by letting them run the numbers and show us how it looks. We can respond in the negative if we don't like it. But if we're getting something as big as 100% this year, I'm playing ball with them. And I think politically, I just don't think it would be beneficial for us to take that idea and say, throw that in the trash. I think that would be horrible. Not the right response. Bob, I understand what you're saying. I think we should definitely analyze it and look at it and see what they come up with for options. But I would not come out of the gate saying no.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm just saying my personal view is that we have smoothing devices built in to our proposal. And I think that Mike was not that wedded to this agreement. I think he was throwing that out there because he knows that Pelham is going to have a tough change this year. They're going to have a big assessment change. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will. But he did also make the point that if you use a 4 or 5%, Amherst is never going to have that problem. And right. For all the other towns, it's only a few $1,000s each. Right. So how bad could the guardrails really be?
Right.
In terms of how
Allison conceded that. Allison conceded that point too. Yeah. So, Peter Demling seems to go all over the map. I mean, depending on which meeting you observe.
They're trying to figure it out. I mean, a lot of them are new to this. It's it's complicated.
Yeah.
Susie and then AJ.
I looked back at the DESE website and read a lot of the comments that were made when they solicited comments about the Chapter 70 funding and some of the issues of hold harmless and other things that were in that. A lot of people complained that are on the statutory and had lots of complaints. That formula does jump around. A 5-year rolling average of some of that would help smooth things out for all of us. And I think that if we have people thinking about it and working on it, that's where the success is.
AJ.
Yeah, two quick points. One is, I think one of the positive developments here is also that the way the superintendent was framing the discussion was really emphasizing how the modified statutory method is in and of itself both a smoothing device and a compromise. And so I feel like they haven't really made us in past discussions, they haven't really made enough of the distinction between the term statutory gets thrown out. And I feel like we haven't in the past gotten sort of appropriate credit for really proposing a compromise to the statutory method, which is the modified. And so I feel like that's finally kind of getting through. And then one small point on the guardrails is I really think that's kind of like a symbolic gesture that we should support. And I don't think it's going to have an impact on a significant impact on us. It may in this year, because we're making a dramatic change from 65% to something potentially much higher than that. So that's the reason why it might come into play for Shutesbury this year, is just because we're making a big jump of, absorbing more of the statutory method. But like moving forward in the future, if they were to go to 100% modified statutory with guardrails, I think it's moving forward. There's rarely going to be a year in which we're going to those guardrails, if they're talking about 4 or 5%, that's going to be an issue for us. I think it's something that helps sell the concept to the other towns, and we should support it and embrace it because it may hopefully it may accomplish that goal. So I don't think it's something that we should be terribly concerned about.
Okay, so we all good for Thursday evening?
Oh,
At, what time is?
6, I think.
6 o'clock.
It's a 6 o'clock?
nice.
It is 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Becky, you still out there?
Oh, dear God, every Excel file I've ever made has opened up.
Goodness.
Wow.
And I
We only
can't,
need one.
and if I could find it, I'd show it to you.
Gripes.
Okay.
I'm so
Alright.
sorry.
So am I.
I'll have to do this next time.
Yeah, I was
hope-
gonna say, in the meantime, Becky, if you could send it to us so we could digest what you
Yeah,
have
that'd be great.
and allow us to,
Well,
maybe be a
let
little
you
bit
know
more
in the morning.
engaged.
I can't, like I said, I don't know what, I can't close Excel. It's like 100 spreadsheets have opened up on my desktop.
Oh, boy.
It's a mess. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to call my IT guy in the morning. I can't tell you what the heck just happened. Jim Hemingway's probably knows better than anybody, but
You can't quit the program?
I can't even quit the program.
Can't
Hold
shut down your PC, or are you afraid if you do?
No,
you'll
don't
spoil
do
it?
that. Don't. Option key, hold down the option key and right click on the Excel icon, and that'll give you the option to force quit it.
Hold down the option key.
Right click on the app, Excel.
It's
In your
just
dock.
giving me hide Excel. It's not, I don't have the option to quit.
Try the command key, hold the command key down and do the same thing.
And right click. Sorry, I left click.
Yeah, right click is important.
Nope.
Try the control key, hold the control key down, click on the app, right click on it.
Nope, nothing.
One of the three, it should be the option key, holding the option key down and clicking on the application.
think
Right
it's-
clicking on the application will allow
I think you have to do
to-
both control, option,
Oh,
and the right click, all three, yeah, at the same time.
Something. Nope.
You pull the Apple menu will give you a force quit. Apple
I don't think there's any other options.
Apple menu.
Screaming.
All right.
Thank you guys. Not,
Becky, if you could make a note to, once it gets resolved, if you could send us that document so we can be ready to go with it
Yeah.
at our next meeting.
yeah, I think I'm gonna remember that all very well. If I ever get out of this nightmare.
All right.
Okay,
Anything else for Thursday night? Are we good to go? Thursday night? Okay.
I don't have the Zoom links yet. And you guys haven't seen them yet. I put in.
Yeah, we've got them.
Yeah, from Sasha.
Yeah, we got them from Sasha. It was a while ago.
Oh, I'm stupid then. Okay, good. I was.
But-
Yeah,
Yeah, but did you also need to have them set up for the individual finance committee and select
No,
board?
No, I don't think we do this time. I think, I just
think that they were
posted
that
all
route.
3 boards for Thursday at 6. So you're posted, but there's no Zoom link with the posting.
Okay, so there's
Because it's
not going to be any need for
something
us to meet with the select board and the school
Too late.
committee during
We did that.
that
already.
Thursday evening.
I don't think there'll be an opportunity.
Okay,
They won't let us out of the room.
okay.
Becky,
All right.
the email went out on January 26th from Sasha.
Ah, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And Becky, it is the option key that you hold down, not the control or command.
And when you say right click, that's on the pad. I have.
Oh, you got it, Pat. Okay, I see. I have a mouse. It's just so I. Well, then you have to hold down the control key as well, because the control key will convert the pad to, to a normal right-clicking situation. It's a little complicated.
Yeah, I keep getting alert messages. I bet that's what's throwing it off. I don't know. Anyway. Okay. I can't be helpful anymore.
all right. We did talk about, and Susie, you sent us some information on this elementary school, the discrepancies. Do we
Yeah.
want to go through some of that?
Well, so what's gonna happen is I talked with Caitlin again today. I had sent her something where I looked at the chunks of it that seemed in discrepancy, and I talked to her today. She is going to put together the box that goes after the budget that explains the partial and whole positions that are going to be funded by either ESSER or school choice. And she's going to label it and we'll know the dollar value. They chose to put the format different than Bruce did. Bruce had included all the costs and all the revenue in the whole sheet. They chose not to do that because they felt it distorted looking back at 22. So we had another conversation today and she's going to work on it and get it to us soon. And if there's any problem in what she's organized, it should show up at that point, and I will keep following that.
So are they gonna send us another revised budget, Susie?
Yes, she will. She sees it as an additional page that explains the piece that's making the numbers changed.
So Susie, they're still going to be requesting for their operating budget, 2,250,948.
I don't know yet. I think we have to wait till we see this piece.
Okay, so there is okay, they may change it. Okay.
Susie?
Yeah.
I was wondering, so did you talk to her all about printing in black and white and not using large blocks of color so that we don't use all our toner every time we print a budget?
Yeah, well, so I look at the budget as not the PowerPoint presentation, but as the, let's see, where is it? Over here. I'm looking for the one that all the information comes in the lines, title, and then the FY21 budget and actual FY22 budget, FY23 proposed budget, and the change in dollars and the change in percents. That's not that different than what he gave us. I'm not looking for the big PowerPoint presentation.
No, but the budget shows up on what you're looking at?
Well, here we go. Yeah.
Those
I
are-
will hold one up to the screen. Does that?
I can't see anything because I have 150 open.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is what a regular budget looks like. So I made sure I sent it out to you, not just the presentation, which doesn't have enough information. This
Yeah,
is-
well, no, I got, you sent that to us and I got it, Susie.
Okay, so that, and
It's
I
more,
don't,
it's more a parallel to the old budget, but not quite.
but quite different because Bruce has never included the former year by number. He would only include change and percentage. The dollar change over last year, but not what last year was. So I find this easier to get information from. And then, but not a lot of color. Yeah, I don't think this one is the one that Becky was objecting to. This is pretty straightforward as a budget.
Okay,
Becky, did you mean to have your video off or?
I can't find it.
Okay.
Hey, Becky,
Yeah,
Becky,
yeah.
can I make a suggestion to you? If you pull your Apple menu down, you can go to force quit and quit Excel.
Pull it down. I tried to force quit a shift command escape. It's not, that won't
But
work.
can you
either.
go to the Apple menu, just go down to force quit, see if that works.
In the ribbon.
I can't get that to open. It goes into a spiraling circle.
So you're just gonna have to pull a plug on it then, I guess.
No, call
Okay,
Hank.
oh,
Don't pull the plug yet.
now, Jim, you said not to turn it off, right? At this point?
Jim Hemingway.
Yeah, well, you could shut you could just shut the computer down and reboot it, but that would take you off,
We missed
disconnect
it.
you temporarily.
You can call Hank.
But you don't have a mouse handy, do you?
No.
Hmm. It's just easier to use a mouse. Otherwise, it's hold the control and the option keys down, and then direct your pointer to click on either the shortcut that you have on your desktop for Excel or the application itself, and that will bring up the menu that we normally get when we right click with a mouse, and in that will be force quit, which is the way to do it without harming any of your data.
Okay. I'll keep trying. Sorry, guys, I don't mean to interrupt.
I
All
can
right.
bring a mouse up to you, Becky, if you want. I got one sitting here. A new
Um,
one.
Mac, it's gonna be
After the meeting, I could come up.
I don't think I have the right adapter here. No, I'll figure it out. I think
Oh,
our,
that's right. You have a 2017 Mac, a MacBook Pro. Yeah, those are problematic.
I bet I only
Okay,
have about 500 more spreadsheets to close.
Okay, all right, well, Becky's working on that. Expense report review, does anybody have anything on the expense report they wanted to get into?
I had one question for Becky.
Yeah.
Just looking at the police budget and seeing how high the salaries are relative to the budget, but knowing that because we don't have a chief, we're going to have a tremendous amount of savings in that line. Would we be able to, are there limits to the amount of the money that we can transfer between two lines at end of year to clean lines up? Or
George, the answer to the police situation is we can start paying the if we are running low, we can start paying the sergeant out of the chief's salary because she's the acting chief.
Oh, okay, so we're not gonna have a problem there. Okay,
Right, we won't have a problem.
thank you.
Anything else on the expense report? What about committees? Committee reports?
No.
I can share some updates from capital planning. Bob, you can fill in if I'm missing anything, but so capital planning met on January 31st with the highway department and the fire department. Both provided information about requests that they're making. So the highway department is requesting a replacement for their 2003 dump truck. I guess that manufacturer Sterling stopped making those trucks in 2008, and the parts are getting super hard to find, and there's all kinds of problems with that vehicle. So this is a big request. I think it's
320.
What's that?
320.
Yeah, because it's actually served two components. Let's see, the fire department is requesting a new SUV to replace the Ford Explorer that the chief uses, which was, I think, inherited from the police department. This is another vehicle that's having like severe rust issues and other mechanical problems. And think that would, if approved, that would be about a $50,000 purchase.
I'm sorry, was that, did you say, was that fire? Was that fire?
Yes,
That was fire?
that was for
Yeah.
the fire department, yeah. We also started the discussion that I think has basically come out of FinCom discussions about actually prioritizing the school roof project and actually starting to plan for a capital request to pay for the engineering instead of waiting for, you know, the state to approve a grant, which doesn't seem likely to happen. So, so that looks like we're moving forward and is going to be something that we actually prepare. And I think maybe even the school committee and the capital planning committee will have to figure out who's actually sponsoring the request. But anyway, the point being that we're trying to kind of move forward with that so that we can secure funding for the engineering. Anything else, Bob?
Yeah, I just want to say, just on that point, and this is something I want to
Yeah.
put in front of the finance committee, that was an issue that we discussed, Becky and myself particularly. We wanted to, if we were to propose out of capital planning that someone sponsors an article to provide funds for school roof engineering part 2, then the question is, in my mind, is we come up with a sum that's adequate to cover that. And Becky thought that we might need to get bids before we could actually determine what that number is. My opinion is we can just do an informal survey, find out what's an adequate number to cover that expense, and then go out for bids after the money's been approved. Or even, you know, because we don't have any reason to go out for bids before the money is approved. So I would like to see us do some informal research. Certainly the building committee would be helpful to Becky on that. And then we come up with a number, and, you know, I don't know who should sponsor this. I think that capital planning would sponsor it. School committee might be the proper place for it to be initiated. I don't know. But maybe some people on this committee have a view about that.
And Bob, the objective is, by doing what you're proposing, is to have a more accurate capital estimate?
Well, just to make sure it's adequate, you know, I mean, like, to my way of thinking, just like last year when we did the HVAC engineering, we put it into the budget, we put it into a capital request, and we covered it. We covered the costs out of that money, and then the rest of the money can go directly into construction. So it's a matter of just having enough there to cover what we anticipate will be the cost of the engineering for the school roof, because, you know, if the money does come through at the state, good. If it doesn't, we want Plan B to be completely in train, so that Plan B can be executed this year.
Yeah, I guess, Jim, the big picture here is just feeling like we need to move forward on that project, and we can no longer afford to just kind of continue to wait for the state to award us a grant for the project. And so just want the first step in moving forward is obviously the engineering. And so, yeah, I think that the big picture is that just feeling like we need to get moving on that.
So this is what Bob has proposed, is to get to a faster timeline.
Right. The sense of urgency is getting, I think that the universal kind of agreement that that Plan B should be at least put on the tee, you know, ready to drive out. So we got to get that started.
So the difference between Bob's proposal and my proposal is just having the building committee make some phone calls or putting together a decent scope and putting a bid out there to try to get real proposals.
Well, yeah, I just don't know, Becky, as a practical matter, we need to certainly contact some professionals like we did with the HVAC and get some feedback. And then we really can't ask for bids though, unless we don't have any money to spend. So let's get that money appropriated, and then let's go to work on the bidding process, right?
And there's a big difference between what Bob thinks it's gonna cost and what he's saying, 60,000, Bob, or was the number?
I have no idea, Becky. I gotta talk to the engineers. We gotta get together and get some phone calls and find out what is reasonable for this project.
A question.
Yeah, we had Susie and then George.
Oh, sorry, Susie.
I wonder that the last engineering project that started on the roof part that we're working on, they are seeing things about what needs to be dealt with, and they made a plan and they're trying to execute that. So having enough expertise up front to go down the right path and not to be blindsided, I think is very important, because this roof has some problems.
George.
2 points. Well, question for Becky. Do we have to have an approval from the town to move forward on a project to seek a bid? Or can we get a bid so that we can present the bid to the town to vote on?
Right. We can do B. You can do it either way, but
So what's the harm with going out and getting bids right now?
well, that's what, the only difference is I was gonna do it with a real, a solidified scope so that any, people that we talk to, people that we get bids from have a consistent message of what we're looking for instead of different people making phone calls.
Sounds like we have no risk in getting engineering bids now. That's my first point. Second point is, to Bob's point about coming up with an amount, and if we don't spend it all, no harm done. If we decided to use free cash, for instance, to pay for the engineering, and we put in a number that was very large, just goes back, whatever we don't spend just goes back into free cash, and it's no harm done.
That's exactly what my thinking is, George.
Yeah.
So again, we'll have to come up with a number in capital planning, and Becky and I will have to sort out how we get there. But it's important that we get there. It's an urgency about this project, I think, that we have to remember. So getting the money is important, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. I would not want to bet on having town meeting on a regular schedule this year. So the way things are looking right now. So, but in any case, I think that it's important for us to do as much as we can on this roof project to get it in train.
Susie.
So will we have, maybe we will have a capital planning on our agenda soon, because there are some other capital requests, right? You were just focusing on some of them, but the accounting hardware, and you could just list whatever other ones are out there that I could put on my list, or we could put it on the agenda in the future.
Well, I can just quickly let you know that on January 17th, which is the previous meeting, we've met with with Kristen and with Gail about the Vadar system. So yeah, the Vadar purchase is accounting cloud-based accounting software is a request. The police department is requesting 2 items. One is a new cruiser, and the second is a series of those digital speed boards that they've identified 3 locations where they want to utilize those. And so I think, yeah, so it's police, highway, fire, school, and accounting, right? Am I missing any?
No, that's it.
Bob? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so my impression was the capital planning committee might be ready to meet with finance, with FinCom by maybe like our next meeting.
No
No,
way. We haven't even voted on these things.
Yeah, so that's the next step, is that we've got to vote on whether recommend.
And our meeting is scheduled to meet, not to vote, but to meet with who, Becky, on the, let's see, capital planning on the
March 2nd.
of March, 2nd of March, yeah.
So your next meeting is March 2nd.
yep. Because
And
we
that's when you-
also, we're waiting to hear on the library because if the grant does not come through for the library, they will have the $25,000 request.
Yeah,
So we're not gonna be ready to meet with FinCom for a while. We'll keep you up to date.
well, as we can see, we don't have enough things to fill our agenda nowadays, so.
Really?
These meetings are really
Is
short.
there a
too.
new date for town meeting? Has that been finalized?
February 15th, just the upcoming select board date is when the select board is supposed to choose the final, choose the day. Whether it's going to be the 30th of April or if they're going to push it into May, when it could potentially be warmer, in case people really need it to be outside.
We're gonna have a pool about that? Because we want to lay some money on that.
A March 2nd capital plan meeting is pretty close to April 30th. Because we have to use up some of those meetings for warrant approval. So that's a scary thought.
It leaves us a month, Susie.
Yeah, that's my concern for pushing to get this capital planning and us together. But
I
Go for an
really
April
think you're right.
There's still on the biggest item, capital plan is dealing with is the dump truck at $320,000 for the only quote that only complete quote with body and chassis. So Tim has really been pushing to get more information and he's trying to, so that's the other open issue. So as it is the largest item and he is pulling teeth to get anybody to quote.
This is a tough
That's-
time.
Just
It's a tough year for buying new vehicles.
It's a
tough time
terrible.
to buy anything.
tough, and he won't even, frankly, we won't discuss our deliberations, but he can't get quotes from anybody and he can't even get any guarantee he'll get delivery in FY '23. So,
And those trucks use a
terribly.
lot of chips.
no, they're not delivering chassis. Those big companies are not delivering chassis right now. So
Susie. You're mute.
Yeah, the other question I had is, do we have any better idea of the recycling hauling contract process? Like what's the time framing on that?
So they have handed off to me just a couple days ago their draft and asked me to make 3 additions. I have to find a map and type up a bunch of road lists for them and then put it out to bid as soon as possible. So hopefully within a month, hopefully by the beginning of March, the bids will be out. By the middle of March, hopefully we will have the bids will be back. And that's the best I can give you.
Okay, the time frame.
Yeah, and that committee knows to meet with us when they've got all their data together. So that they're already planning to meet with us.
Yeah, they reached out to you, right, Jim?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, any other committee reports?
Personnel board, January is over, so we're waiting for the CPI numbers and we can calculate what the employee increase will be. Hopefully we'll have that done for our next meeting, which is next Thursday. So then we can bring something to the Finance Committee Select Board. Also, you all got the wage and salary survey from FERCog for the most recent year. And we're analyzing it right now. We should be done with that analysis. Again, next Thursday, that analysis is looking at what the average is across all the towns in Franklin County for pretty much for all the positions we have in town that aren't contracted, and seeing how we stack up. And there are some positions we are just woefully well below. And so we're going to identify those. look at where we think they should be. And that'll probably be part of a conversation with the finance committee and the select board. That's what we're going to present it to for the next fiscal year, adjusting specific positions that look like they're way below market. You know, we have a very big concern. We have a long list of reasons why we don't want to underpay people. I can imagine you all have some ideas of what those are. And so we'll present all that at some point, but that's really what we've been doing. And we'll have something, obviously we have to have something in place for the budget. And again, based on our previous conversation, I will bring to them for fiscal 23 project, analyzing our policy related to cell phone usage and reimbursement.
Okay. As far as a fire department chief moving forward, that committee continues to meet weekly. There's a meeting tomorrow night at 7. So anybody's looking for a meeting tomorrow night, 7 o'clock is a possibility.
Boy,
Hat trick this week.
Actually, we might be getting close to wrapping up as far as making recommendations to the select board that ultimately decides how to go forward. So I would think within the next couple of weeks or so, we might be prepared to do that. So moving along pretty good. Okay.
Susie, you're gonna do the police study group?
Motion to adjourn, Jim, perhaps?
Well,
We're running well into overtime here.
Maybe
Yeah.
Melody will take a turn on the police study.
Well, I'll tell you what, after watching the regional school committee meeting and seeing how long they meet for, geez, we got it easy.
yeah.
4 hours.
Yeah, Treasury really ate up some time tonight. The Treasury the Treasury and related discussions took a lot of time.
You guys did it in a much different way than it's been done in years.
Yeah, a lot more we've dug into the detail there, I guess, haven't
Yeah,
we?
you did.
Haven't we, Becky?
Yeah, you did.
You know. But I think we probably understand it pretty good.
Which is great.
Mm-hmm. Okay, did Melody or Susie want to comment on police or?
Susie, I can't comment because I missed some of that meeting, so I think it would be incomplete.
Okay, well, it's the survey's gone out and a problem with the mailing company was fixed. So now every household will be looking to have a work group to compile the data. And we are talking about the template for how the report might be written, but there's a lot that could still be done. There's some things that are way too detailed and some things that are not detailed enough. And the survey may help tell us how much more work we have to do, really.
Okay. All right. Next meeting is 2 weeks from now, the 22nd at 6:30. Does that sound right?
Sounds good.
no meeting. next
everyone?
week.
22.
Two?
All right.
Oh, wow.
Play the number.
I play the number. That's right.
We could meet for 2 hours and 20 minutes. You know.
I make a motion, we adjourn tonight.
Second,
That would be a
Second.
short meeting.
All right.
yes.
All right, well, great.
Did
Thank
we vote?
Patty.
No?
Overnight
just-
design.
Tara,
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, eye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, aye.
aye.
We'll see you all very soon. What, 2
Yes,
nights?
sir.
All right.
Can't
Celtics.
wait. Yeah, go
Right.
Celtics, looking good.
Have you been looking tonight? Brooklyn?
No, not yet, but I'm just saying, they're on a streak right now. They look good.
Well, they've been playing some weak teams
That's
and
true.
they've got everybody back.
But
And
you
like-
see the
like
numbers of
tonight-
our starting
Like
lineup?
tonight Brooklyn they don't have none of their big three.
Right, same thing when we beat Miami too. But Charlotte was a good win. Chicago was a good win.
Yeah,
And our starting five looks really good.
yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
they're playing together.
yeah. Their
Oh, yeah,
defense.
no, you're right. There's a grain of salt to be had for sure.
Yeah.
But
And
remember, we
I-
also had a.
If they
stretch
start
of
beating some really good teams, and then I'll be really sold.
Good
Yeah.
teams that are healthy.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But remember also in January, they had a streak where they were playing Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and
Yeah.
then Phoenix, so they had some tough streaks. So it's actually good that they got a team building streak going right now.
Yeah, I saw that Becky, you trying to go home?
Oh, no, I think I'm down to maybe I only have like 30 or 40 left to.
Oh, my God.
That's terrible.
I saw somewhere that of the remaining
Well, that's the
schedule, the
worst.
Celtics have one of the weaker schedules versus the contending teams.
Good. Our
Yeah.
guys will be a little fresher
Yeah.
and we'll get a chance to work on some different schemes and hopefully our confidence level will be running high. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's going on right now against Brooklyn.
Yeah, I got to check it out.
Yeah.
All right, Tim, take care.
Have a good one.
All
Good
right.
Hey,
night,
Becky.
guys. Yeah.
Becky, sorry for screwing you up tonight.
Just, I'm not gonna listen, take your advice again. Oh, no, you didn't. There was no way to know. I've never encountered anything like this.
Yeah, you think you're making progress?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
I am at this point. I think there could be daylight. I might
All
make
right.
it. better. Thank
All
you,
right.
guys.
All right. Well, you have a good night.
You too.
Take care.
You too. Bye. All